My parents handed my sister a luxury cruise package and tossed me a $2 scratch off, laughing that maybe I would finally get lucky. They were right. I hit the jackpot, but the real twist was not the money. It was realizing who paid for that cruise seconds before I scratched the ticket. They made me pay for my own humiliation. Watch until the end because I did not scream. I simply set a trap. My name is Isla Miller. The heater in my 10-year-old sedan was rattling like a dying lung, fighting a losing battle against the damp chill of a Knoxville November. It was Thanksgiving Day, the one day of the year when obligation outweighs instinct, and my instinct was screaming at me to turn the car around. I could have gone back to my apartment, ordered takeout, and slept for 12 hours. That would have been mercy. Instead, I was driving toward the suburbs, toward a house that never felt like a sanctuary, with a pumpkin pie I had baked from scratch sitting on the passenger seat. I work as a project manager for public spaces at Civic Bloom Urban Studio. It sounds prestigious on LinkedIn, but in reality, it means I spend my days in steel-toe boots and a high-visibility vest, arguing with city councils about zoning permits and trying to convince contractors that, yes, the drainage system actually needs to work. I revitalize neglected parks and broken sidewalks. I fix things that other people have stopped caring about. It is exhausting, thankless work, but I am good at it. I am used to looking at a mess and seeing the potential for structure. My family, however, only sees the mess. I pulled into the driveway, maneuvering my beat-up car to the far edge of the pavement to avoid blocking the entrance. I turned off the ignition, and the silence that filled the car was heavy. I took a deep breath, staring at the front door. The wreath was new, perfectly symmetrical, artificial. Just as I reached for the door handle, a sleek, black luxury SUV swung into the driveway, blocking me in completely. The headlights blinded me for a second before the engine cut out. My sister, Tessa, stepped out of the passenger side. She looked like she had just walked off a catalog shoot. Her coat was camel hair, pristine and tailored. Her boots were leather, not a scuff in sight. Trent, her husband, climbed out of the driver's seat, adjusting his blazer. They did not own that car. I knew for a fact Trent's credit score hovered somewhere in the subprime basement, but appearances were their currency. I stepped out into the cold air, grabbing the pie. "Nice ride," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Trent smirked, tossing the keys in his hand. "It is a rental. Upgrade. You know how it is. Isla cannot show up looking like a peasant." Tessa walked over, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. She frowned. "Isla, is that the same coat you wore last Christmas? It smells like wet wool. And are those mud stains on your jeans?" I looked down. There was a faint smear of dried clay near the hem. A souvenir from the site visit I had squeezed in yesterday evening. I worked late. I did not have time to change before I drove down here. I said, "Mom hates dirty shoes in the house," Tessa said, turning away and marching toward the front door. "Just leave them outside. It is freezing. But you are used to the elements." Right? I swallowed the sharp retort forming in my throat and followed them. Inside, the house smelled of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and expensive candles. It was warm, suffocatingly so. My mother, Linda, was in the hallway before I could even take off my coat. She hugged Tessa first, a long, squeezing embrace that she never offered me. "You look stunning, darling," she cooed. Then she turned to Trent, patting his arm. "And Trent, you look prosperous. I love that watch." Then her eyes landed on me. The smile did not disappear, but it stiffened. It became the smile one gives to a delivery driver who is 5 minutes late. "Isla," she said, "you are here. Happy Thanksgiving." "Mom," I said, holding out the pie. "I made pumpkin." She took it with 2 fingers, as if it might be contaminated. "Store-bought crust from scratch." I said. She hummed, a non-committal sound that managed to convey disappointment. "Well, put it in the kitchen, and for heaven's sake, take off that coat. You look like you just came from a construction site." "I am a project manager." "Mom, it is a construction site." She waved her hand dismissively. Details. Just try to look presentable. Your father is in the living room. Do not upset him with politics today. I walked into the kitchen, placed the pie on the granite counter, and took a moment to compose myself. I could hear them laughing in the living room. The sound was bright and exclusive. I was the audience, never the participant. I washed my hands, scrubbing the imaginary dirt from my fingernails until my skin was red. Dinner was a performance. It always was. My father, Harold, sat at the head of the table, carving the turkey with surgical precision. He was a man who believed his own opinions were facts and everyone else's were merely noise. So, Trent said, leaning back in his chair, swirling his red wine, the market is volatile right now. But that is where the opportunity lies. I am looking into this new leverage tech venture. High risk, massive yield. You have to have the stomach for it. Of course, not everyone is built for the big leagues. Harold nodded sagely. Fortune favors the bold. Son, you have always had that drive, unlike some people who settle for a paycheck. He did not look at me, but the insult landed squarely on my plate. I kept my head down, pushing peas around with my fork. Tessa chimed in. Holding up her phone, I posted that photo of us by the car, and it already has 400 likes. People are obsessed with the aesthetic. I am thinking of pivoting my brand to luxury lifestyle curation. That is wonderful. Sweetie, Linda said, beaming. You have such an eye for beauty. Isla, Trent said, his voice loud enough to cut through the praise. How is the sidewalk patrol still playing in the dirt? I manage million-dollar budgets for urban redevelopment. Trent, I said quietly, we are currently redesigning the downtown waterfront to improve accessibility. Boring, Tessa sighed. Who cares about sidewalks? It is about community impact, I said. Community does not pay the bills. Harold scoffed. You are 35. Isla, you drive a car that sounds like a lawnmower. Maybe you should listen to Trent. Learn something about real money. I bit the inside of my cheek. I needed to get the salt. I stood up. Sit down, Linda snapped. We are eating. You forgot the salt. Mom, and the cranberry sauce is still on the counter. Well, do not just announce it, she said. Go get it. And bring more napkins. Trent spilled a drop of wine. I became the ghost at the feast. I fetched the salt. I refilled the wine glasses. I cleared the salad plates. I brought out the dessert. I moved around the periphery of their celebration. A service droid in a flannel shirt. They did not say thank you. They barely paused their conversation. Finally, the plates were pushed away, and the mood shifted. It was time for the gifts. We did not usually exchange big gifts on Thanksgiving, but this year, my parents had made a production out of it. We have a surprise, Linda announced, her eyes shining with excitement. We came into a little unexpected bonus from your father's old insurance policy maturity, and we wanted to do something special. She reached under the sideboard and pulled out a thick, glossy envelope. She slid it across the table toward Tessa. Tessa frowned, feigning confusion. For me, open it, Harold urged, grinning. Tessa tore open the seal. She pulled out a brochure and a sleek itinerary folder. Her eyes went wide. She screamed. No way, she shrieked. A cruise the Caribbean. 12 days, Linda said proudly. The Royal Palm package. VIP suite. All-inclusive. Drinks, excursions, the works. For you and Trent. You two work so hard. You deserve a break. Oh my God. Tessa jumped up, rushing over to hug Mom. Then Dad. Trent looked at the brochure, his eyebrows raising as he calculated the value. This is top tier. Harold. Thank you. This is incredible. It cost a fortune, but you are worth it, Harold said, his voice thick with pride. $7,000 for the package. Nothing but the best for our girl. $7,000. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. That was more than I had in my entire savings account. Tessa was bouncing up and down. This is going to look amazing on my feed. Thank you. Thank you. The applause died down. They sat back, glowing with mutual adoration. Then, the silence stretched. I sat there, hands folded in my lap. I did not expect anything. I never did. But the exclusion was palpable. "Oh, right," Harold said, as if suddenly remembering I was in the room. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled white envelope. He tossed it across the table. It slid over the polished wood and stopped right in front of my water glass. "We did not forget you." "Isla," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. I picked it up. It was light. I opened it. Inside was a single scratch-off lottery ticket. The price printed in the corner was $2. I stared at it. "Well," Linda said, letting out a sharp, high-pitched laugh. "Scratch it. Maybe you will finally get lucky. God knows you need a win. Yeah, scratch it." "Isla," Trent jeered, "might win $5. That is almost a gallon of gas for that wreck of yours." They were all watching me, expectant, eager. They wanted to see me scratch the cheap foil, see the losing numbers, and offer a polite smile while they sat next to their $7,000 luxury cruise. It was not a gift. It was a prop for their amusement. "I cannot do this," I whispered. What Harold barked. "Do not be ungrateful. I am not being ungrateful," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I just have a headache. I am going to clear the table." "Oh, stop being such a martyr," Tessa said, rolling her eyes. "Just scratch the ticket. Why do you have to ruin the mood?" I stood up, sliding the ticket into the back pocket of my jeans. "I will scratch it later. Thank you for the gift." I began stacking the plates, the clatter of china filling the awkward silence. I carried the stack into the kitchen, the sound of their renewed laughter following me like a physical blow. They were already moving on, discussing which swimsuits Tessa should pack. I stood by the sink, turning on the hot water. The steam rose up, clouding the window. I felt hollowed out. It was not about the money. I did not want to cruise with them. It was the message. "You are worth $2. Your sister is worth $7,000. My phone, sitting on the drying rack where I had left it, buzzed against the granite. Then it buzzed again. A long, sustained vibration. I wiped my wet hands on a dish towel and picked it up. It was a notification from my bank app. A fraud alert. Transaction pending Royal Horizon Cruise Lines. Amount $7,240.50. I stared at the screen. The numbers swam before my eyes. I blinked, sure I was misreading it. I tapped into the details. The charge had been made 3 minutes ago. It was pending authorization. And then I looked at the card number. It was ending in 4098. My blood ran cold. That was not my daily checking card. That was my emergency credit card. The one with the high limit I had built up over 10 years of perfect credit history. The one I had given to my mother 3 years ago when she was going through a cancer scare, just in case she needed medication and I was not reachable. I had told her only for life or death emergencies. She had never returned it, and I, stupidly, had never canceled it because I trusted her. I looked at the timestamp. The charge went through exactly when they were handing Tessa the envelope. The room seemed to tilt. The air was suddenly too thin. They did not pay for the cruise. They used my card. They used my credit. They gifted my sister a luxury vacation, received the praise, the glory, the gratitude, and they sent the bill to me. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was precise. They knew I would see the charge eventually. They probably banked on me being too passive to make a scene, or they would gaslight me into thinking it was a family contribution. Isla has a job. She can afford to help her sister. I looked through the open doorway into the dining room. I could see the back of Harold's head. I could see Linda pouring more wine, her face flushed with the intoxication of being the generous matriarch. They were laughing. I felt something snap inside my chest. It was not a loud break. It was quiet. It was the sound of a tether being severed. My hand was shaking. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the crumpled $2 ticket. The irony was so sharp it almost drew blood. They stole $7,000 from me and gave me a piece of cardboard worth less than a cup of coffee. I laid the ticket on the wet counter. I grabbed a quarter from the fruit bowl, a stray coin that had been sitting there for years. I pressed the coin into the latex coating. I did not scratch with hope. I scratched with rage. I wanted to tear through the paper. I wanted to shred the evidence of their pity. Scratch, scratch, Scratch. The gray dust curled up and brushed away. First line lemon, cherry, horseshoe. Second line, bell, diamond, 7. Third line. My hand stopped. I brushed away the last of the debris. There was a symbol I had never seen on a ticket before. It was not a number. It was a word, printed in bold, black block letters, surrounded by tiny stars. Jackpot. I stared at it. I read the fine print on the back. For this specific game, the holiday special edition, the jackpot symbol meant the top prize. I knew the odds. I knew the statistics. I dealt with probability and risk assessment every day at work. This was a statistical anomaly. This was impossible. I looked at the prize amount listed in the tiny grid at the bottom. $1 million. Correction. $5 million. I squinted. No. The jackpot corresponded to the progressive pot. The current advertised amount for the state lottery grand prize was sitting at something much higher. I pulled up the lottery website on my browser, my fingers moving automatically. I checked the game number. Holiday Gold Rush. Top prize. $150 million. Lump sum option available. I looked back at the ticket. The symbol was undeniable. In the dining room. Trent shouted, "Hey." Isla. "Did you win enough to buy a new personality?" Laughter. I stood there, the ticket resting under my fingertips. $150 million and $7,000 of debt on a credit card in the other room. The equation of my life had just shifted violently. If I walked in there and showed them this ticket, that $7,000 debt would vanish. They would hug me. They would love me. They would tell me that the cruise charge was just a mistake, or better yet, that I could now afford to treat the whole family if I showed them this ticket. I would never be free. I took the ticket. I folded it carefully, once, twice, and slid it into the hidden pocket inside my bra. I deleted the bank notification from my lock screen. Though the charge remained in the app, I took off the apron. I folded it neatly and placed it on the counter. I walked out of the kitchen. Isla Linda called out as I passed the dining room archway. "Where are you going? We have not cut the pie yet." I paused. I did not look at them. I stared at the front door. I forgot something in my car. I said, my voice was steady, terrifyingly steady. "Well, hurry back." Harold grunted. I opened the front door. The cold air hit me, biting and clean. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. I walked to my rattling, rusting car. I got in. I locked the doors. I did not scream. I did not cry. I started the engine. I backed out of the driveway, leaving the warm glow of the house behind me. I left the pie. I left the $7,000 debt, and I carried $150 million into the night. The war had started, and they did not even know they had fired the first shot. I did not go back to my apartment. That was the first variable I eliminated from the equation. My apartment was the first place they would look once the math in their heads started to click. If I went home, I would be a sitting duck in a lease that listed my father as an emergency contact. Instead, I drove 3 exits down the interstate to a motel that sat wedged between a truck stop and a Waffle House. It was the kind of place where the neon vacancy sign buzzed with a sound like a trapped insect, and the front desk clerk did not ask for eye contact, let alone a reason for a Thanksgiving check-in. I paid cash for 2 nights. Room 112, ground floor, backside. The room smelled of industrial lemon cleaner and stale cigarettes masked by years of air conditioning. I locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and latched the chain. Then I wedged a wooden chair under the handle. It was paranoid, perhaps, but I had just left a house where my family had casually committed a felony against me between the turkey and the pumpkin pie. Paranoia was no longer a disorder. It was a survival strategy. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging under my weight. The room was dark, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the thin synthetic curtains. I reached into my shirt and pulled the ticket out. I laid it on the cheap laminate nightstand. The silver scratching dust still clung to the edges. Jackpot. $150 million. I stared at it until the words blurred, then I snapped out of the trance. Panic was a luxury I could not afford. I needed to think like a project manager. I had a crisis on my hands, and the timeline was aggressive. Step 1 was legal armor. I pulled out my phone. It was 9 o'clock on a holiday night. No standard law firm would be open. But I was not looking for a standard lawyer. I searched for high net worth asset protection and trusts in the tri-state area. I found a name that appeared in articles about corporate mergers and quiet settlements. Elias Thorne. His website had no pictures, just a phone number and a promise of absolute discretion. I dialed the emergency line listed for urgent counsel. It rang 4 times. Thorne, a deep, gravelly voice answered. "I need to retain you for a lottery blind trust." I said. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Cold, detached. "Call my office on Monday," he said, sounding bored. "I am holding a ticket worth 9 figures," I said, "and my family has already begun financial fraud against me. I need a blind trust set up before the sun comes up tomorrow, or as close to it as possible. I can pay your holiday rate." There was a pause on the other end. The rustle of movement. "Do not speak to anyone," Thorne said, his tone sharpening instantly. "Do not sign the back of the ticket yet. Take a photo of the front and back. Put it in a safe. I will meet you at my office at 8 in the morning. Bring 2 forms of identification." I hung up. Step 1 complete. Step 2 was the bleeding wound. I opened my banking app. The screen glowed bright in the dark room, illuminating the betrayal in high definition. Pending transaction, Royal Horizon Cruise Lines, $7,240.50. The word pending was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It meant the money had not actually left the building yet. It was promised, reserved, but not gone. I took a screenshot of the transaction. Then I took a screenshot of the notification timestamp. Then I went into the card settings. My thumb hovered over the red button. Report lost or stolen. I pressed it. The app asked for confirmation. "Are you sure this will immediately deactivate your card ending in 4098? I thought about Tessa's face when she opened that brochure. I thought about the way Trent had smirked at my coat. I thought about my mother holding a glass of wine, laughing while she spent my emergency fund on a tan. I pressed confirm. Card deactivated. I was not done. I navigated to the fraud reporting center. I selected the cruise transaction. I marked it as unauthorized. I typed in the comment box. Card was in the possession of a family member for emergency medical use only. Unauthorized use for luxury travel. I did not make this purchase. I hit submit. Somewhere in the digital ether, a red flag was being planted on my mother's gift. When Royal Horizon Cruise Lines went to finalize that charge tomorrow or the next day, the bank would reject it, the cruise would be canceled, the VIP suite would go back into the inventory. The humiliation they planned for me was about to bounce back with interest. I exhaled. A long, shaky breath. I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked like a woman who had been beaten down by 30 years of subtle neglect. But my eyes were different. They were hard. I went back to the main room and turned on the small television bolted to the wall. I needed background noise to drown out the silence in my head. The local news channel was running a recap of the day's events, parades, turkey trots, and then the lottery update. The anchor, a man with too much hairspray, flashed a winning smile, and in life-changing news, the Tennessee Lottery Commission has confirmed that the single winning ticket for the Holiday Gold Rush jackpot was sold right here in Knoxville. The lucky ticket was purchased at the convenience store on Magnolia Avenue earlier this week. My stomach dropped. Magnolia Avenue, that was the store my father stopped at every morning for his coffee and newspaper. It was the store where he bought his weekly scratch-offs. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He had bought the ticket. He had bought a strip of them. Probably. He had kept the ones he thought were lucky. Or maybe he just handed me the one on the top of the stack because he could not be bothered to separate them properly. He did not just give me a ticket, he gave me his winning ticket, and he knew where he bought it. My phone, which had been silent since I left the house, suddenly lit up. Incoming call, Mom. I stared at the screen. It buzzed and danced on the nightstand. I did not answer. It stopped. Then, immediately, a text message. Tessa. Hey sis, just wanted to say sorry if we were a little harsh earlier. Come back. We are opening wine. I felt bile rise in my throat. Tessa never apologized. Never. Another text. Trent Isla. Where did you go? Your dad is worried about that old car of yours. Let us know you are safe. Safe. They did not care if I was safe. They cared if the ticket was safe. The news report must have just finished airing in their living room. They were doing the math. Dad bought the ticket on Magnolia. He gave the ticket to Isla. The winner was sold on Magnolia. My phone rang again. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom again. Then Tessa again. The tone of the messages shifted rapidly. The feigned concern was evaporating, replaced by a frantic, grasping desperation. Mom, Isla, pick up the phone. We need to talk about the gift. There might have been a mistake. Trent, don't be stupid. Isla, you don't know what you're doing with that thing. Come back to the house. Dad. Family meeting. Now. I sat there, watching the notifications stack up like evidence in a murder trial. They were not calling to congratulate me. They were calling to reclaim their property. In their minds, I was just the courier. I was the mule who had accidentally walked off with the cargo. I listened to the voicemail my father left. I held the phone to my ear, pressing it tight. Isla. His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the tremor of rage underneath. We saw the news. You need to come home. We need to protect you. That kind of money brings out the worst in people. You are not equipped to handle this. You need your family. Bring the ticket back so we can put it in the safe. Do not do anything rash. We are a team. Remember, call me. We need to protect you. It was the biggest lie he had ever told. They did not want to protect me from the world. They wanted to be the world that consumed me. I looked at the ticket on the nightstand again. Then I looked at the screenshot of the cruise charge. The timeline was clear. At 6 o'clock. They stole my credit card information to buy a $7,000 vacation because they thought I was worthless. At 8 o'clock, they realized I held the keys to a kingdom. And suddenly, I was family again. If I had not scratched that ticket, I would be crying myself to sleep right now, dreading the phone call to the bank, wondering how I would pay rent after covering their fraud. I would be the victim they always needed me to be. But I had scratched it. I stood up and walked over to the window. I peeked through the gap in the curtains. The parking lot was empty except for a long-haul truck and my sedan. No black SUVs, no luxury rentals. They did not know where I was yet, but they would find out. Knoxville was not that big, and I had habits. They would check my apartment. They would check my office. I needed to disappear before I could reappear. I sat down at the small desk and pulled out a piece of motel stationery. I began to write down everything I could remember about the evening, the time I arrived, the things they said, the exact moment the notification came through, the specific insults. You look like a peasant. Sidewalk patrol. You are worth $2. I wrote it all down. This was not a diary entry. This was an affidavit. I realized something then. Sitting in the dim light of room 112, the theft of the $7,000 was bad. But it was just money. The real crime was earlier. When they used my card, they pretended to be me. They signed my name. They impersonated Isla Miller to get what they wanted. They had stolen my identity long before they tried to steal my fortune. They felt entitled to my name, my credit, my labor, and now, my luck. I capped the pen. The phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. We love you. Isla. Please come home. I looked at the words. They looked like a trap, a snare set in the leaves. I turned the phone off completely. The screen went black. The silence in the room rushed back in, heavy and protective. I lay down on the bed, fully clothed, my hand resting over the pocket where the ticket lay against my chest. I would not sleep. I would wait for the sun. I would wait for Elias Thorne. And when I walked out of this room, Isla Miller the doormat, the servant, the joke would be gone. The woman who returned to them would be someone they had never met before. The war had moved from the dinner table to the balance sheet. And I was the only one who knew the actual score. I needed my passport. That was the only reason I returned to the scene of the crime. Elias Thorne, the lawyer I had spoken to only hours ago, had been explicit. I needed 2 forms of government identification to initiate the blind trust, and my passport was locked in the fireproof box in the back of my closet at my apartment. I waited until 3 in the morning. I parked 2 blocks away, pulling my hood up against the biting wind. The street was quiet. My apartment building, a converted brick warehouse on the edge of the gentrifying district, looked dark. I moved quickly, my keys laced through my fingers, listening for the sound of a luxury SUV engine or familiar voices. There was nothing. I slipped into the lobby and took the stairs instead of the elevator. 3rd floor. I reached my door. Breathing shallowly, I slid the key into the lock. Turning it silently, the door opened. The smell hit me first. It was not the stale air of a closed apartment. It was Chanel No. 5. I froze. The living room lamp clicked on. "Surprise," my mother said. Her voice was soft, trembling with a performance of relief that deserved an Academy Award. They were all there. My father, Harold, was sitting in my favorite armchair, his legs crossed, looking like a chairman of the board waiting for a tardy employee. Tessa was perched on the arm of the sofa, wiping away a dry tear. Trent was leaning against the kitchen island, scrolling on his phone, looking bored. "How did you get in here?" I asked, my hand still gripping the door handle. "I co-signed this lease 10 years ago." "Isla," my father said, his voice calm and reasonable. "I have always had a key. We were worried sick. You vanished. We thought something terrible had happened." Linda rushed forward before I could retreat. She threw her arms around me. The hug was suffocating. It was not an embrace, it was a frisk. I felt her hands patting my back, my sides, grazing my pockets. She was checking for the ticket. "I am fine, Mom," I said, stepping back and pushing her away gently but firmly. "I just needed space. We understand," Harold said. He gestured to the empty chair opposite him. "Sit down. Isla, we need to talk. We need to clear the air." I stayed standing near the door. "I am not sitting. I just came to get some clothes." "Isla, please," Tessa said, her voice dripping with syrup. "We are family. We just want to help you. You are in shock. We know about the ticket." The air in the room shifted. The pretense of safety evaporated. "We know you won," Harold stated flatly. The commission announced the location. "I bought the ticket at the Magnolia store. I gave it to you. It is a family victory." I looked at them. They looked like vultures in business casual. "So," Harold continued, pulling a folded sheet of legal pad paper from his jacket pocket, "we have been brainstorming. This kind of wealth is dangerous if not managed correctly. You are a project manager, Isla, but this is high finance. This is generational wealth." He smoothed the paper out on his knee. "I have drafted a preliminary allocation plan," he said, "to keep things fair, to ensure everyone is protected." He looked up at me over his reading glasses. "Your mother and I will manage the bulk of the principal in a family trust, say 40%. We have the experience. We will ensure the real estate portfolio is solid, Tessa and Trent. They are young. They have business ventures that need capital. 35% to them. It will help Trent launch that tech firm he has been talking about. And me, I asked, my voice dry. You get the remaining 25%. Harold said benevolently, "Do not look at me like that. That is nearly $30 million after taxes. Isla, more money than you could ever spend in 10 lifetimes. It is for your own good. You would just give it away to charity or lose it on bad contractors. This keeps the money in the family. 25%. They wanted 75% of a fortune they had not won, based on a ticket they had given away as a joke." Trent chimed in, pushing off the counter. "It is a standard structure. Isla, limited partners versus general partners. Dad is just trying to save you from the tax liability." I looked at Trent, then I looked at my mother, who was nodding encouragingly. "I have a question." I said, "Anything." "Sweetie," Linda said, If we are talking about finances, I said, keeping my voice steady, who is paying for the Royal Horizon cruise? The room went dead silent. Linda blinked, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. Harold cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. That is a separate issue, Harold said. We are talking about the future. Isla, not petty details. It is not a detail. I said. I pulled my phone out. I had the screenshot ready. I held it up. $7,240.50. I read aloud. Charged to the credit card ending in 4098, my emergency card. The one Mom swore she lost 2 years ago. Linda's face flushed a deep, ugly red. It was an accident, she snapped. The card was saved in the browser autofill. I did not mean to use it. You booked a VIP suite. I said, you had to enter the CVV code from the back of the card. That does not autofill. You had the card in your hand. So what Linda screamed. Her voice cracked, the sweet mother facade shattering instantly. So what? Isla. You are sitting on $150 million and you are harassing me about 7,000. You are so selfish. We raised you. We fed you. We gave you that ticket. You owe us. There it was. The truth. You stole from me. I said quietly, you stole from me when you thought I had nothing. And now you want to steal the rest because I have everything. Trent stepped forward. He pulled a document from his inner blazer pocket. It was typed, formal looking. Look, let us not get emotional, Trent said, his voice dropping to that patronizing tone men use when they think they are the smartest person in the room. Legally speaking, that ticket is a communal family asset. It was purchased with family funds, Dad's money, and given without a formal deed of gift transfer. There is a precedent for constructive trusts. He held the pen out to me. This is a memorandum of understanding, he said. It just outlines what Dad proposed. Sign it, and we can stop fighting. We can cancel the cruise charge if that makes you happy. We will write you a check for the 7,000. Just sign the paper. Isla? I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper. No. I said. Harold stood up. He was a tall man, and he used his height to intimidate. He walked toward me. You are making a mistake. Isla, I am not signing anything. I said, I have retained counsel. His name is Elias Thorne. If you want to talk about the ticket, you can talk to him. If you want to talk about the credit card fraud, you can talk to the police. I filed the report last night. Linda gasped. You called the police on your own mother. I reported a theft. I said, I did not know who the thief was until you just admitted it. Harold's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. He stopped 3 feet from me. You listen to me, he hissed. You are a nobody. You are a project manager who plays in the dirt. You do not know how this world works. If you walk out that door without signing this, we will sue you. Sue me for what I asked. For the ticket, Harold said. We will claim it was stolen. We will claim we had a verbal agreement to share the winnings. It does not matter if it is true. Do you know what happens when ownership is disputed? Isla. The Lottery Commission freezes the funds. He smiled. A cruel, thin-lipped smile. We will tie this up in court for 5 years, 10 years. We will freeze every dime. You will not see a penny. You will be bankrupt paying legal fees while the money sits in an escrow account gathering dust. We can afford to wait. Can you— I stared at him. He was willing to burn it all down just to make sure I did not get to keep it. Is that a threat? I asked. It is a promise, Trent said. I looked at my watch. It was 3:15 in the morning. Get out of my apartment, I said. Harold laughed. It is my apartment. My name is on the lease. Then keep it, I said. I threw my keys on the floor. I turned around and walked out. I did not get my passport. I did not get my clothes. I walked down the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I heard the door slam behind me. I made it to my car and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, shaking. They were not bluffing. They were going to sue me. They were going to destroy me to control me. My phone pinged with an email notification. I looked down. It was not from my lawyer. It was an automated notification from the county clerk's electronic filing system, a service I subscribed to for my job to track zoning permits. Case filed. Miller et al. Versus Miller. Type civil. Property dispute / injunctive relief. Status emergency motion submitted. They had already filed it. They had the paperwork ready before they even came to my apartment. The meeting was a sham. They never intended to negotiate. They wanted me to sign away my rights voluntarily. And when I refused, they pulled the trigger on the nuclear option. I read the summary line. Plaintiffs seek temporary restraining order to prevent defendant from claiming, cashing, or transferring lottery winnings pending resolution of ownership dispute. They did not need to win the lawsuit. They just needed a judge to sign a piece of paper saying the money was contested. Once that happened, the Lottery Commission would lock the vault. I would be a millionaire on paper and a pauper in reality, unable to pay for the high-powered defense I needed to fight them. I started the car. I had no passport. I had no access to my emergency funds. I had a $2 ticket that was now a radioactive isotope. I drove away from the apartment, into the dark, empty streets of Knoxville. I realized then that my father was right about one thing. I was not equipped for this. I had been playing checkers while they were playing a scorched earth war game, but they forgot one thing. Project managers do not just build things. We handle disasters, and I knew something about demolition that they did not. If they wanted to freeze the money, fine, I would let them. I would let the Ice Age come, because while they were watching the money, they were forgetting about the skeletons they had buried to get here, and I knew exactly where the bodies were. Monday morning arrived with the color of a bruise, gray and purple and swollen with rain. I sat in the leather chair across from Elias Thorne, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had turned white. The office was silent, save for the rhythmic tapping of his pen against a mahogany desk that probably cost more than my car. He pushed a document toward me. It was not the trust agreement. It was a court order. They moved faster than I anticipated. Thorne said, his voice devoid of emotion. He was a man who spoke in billable hours. Precise and expensive, they filed an ex parte emergency motion for a temporary restraining order this morning at 8 o'clock. They claimed that the ticket was purchased with misappropriated family funds and that there is a risk of you dissipating the assets. I stared at the paper. It was a wall, a 10-foot-high concrete wall built between me and my future. So what does this mean, I asked. It means the Tennessee Lottery Commission has been served, Thorne explained. They cannot pay out the prize to anyone until the court determines the rightful owner. The money is frozen. Isla, it sits in the state account, accruing interest that neither you nor your parents can touch. For how long? Thorne shrugged. If we litigate this fully 18 months, maybe 2 years, if they appeal longer, 2 years. I felt the air leave my lungs. But I have the ticket, I said. I have physical possession. Possession is 9/10 of the law in the playground, Thorne said. In probate and property court, paper trails matter. They have affidavits stating your father bought the ticket. They have bank records showing he withdrew cash at that location regularly. They are building a narrative that you were merely the courier. And when you saw the winning numbers, you ran. It is a lie, obviously, but it is a lie that requires a trial to disprove. I leaned back, closing my eyes. 2 years. They knew exactly what they were doing. They did not need to win the case. They just needed to starve me out. They knew I lived paycheck to paycheck. They knew I could not afford a 2-year legal war. So what do? I asked. We fight, Thorne said. But I need a retainer, a significant one. Litigation of this magnitude requires experts, depositions, forensic accountants. I need $50,000 to open the file formally. I laughed, a dry cracking sound. I have about $400 in my checking account. Thorne stopped tapping his pen. He looked at me with a pity that felt colder than his indifference. Then we have a problem, he said. I left his office 30 minutes later with a headache that throbbed behind my eyes like a second heartbeat. The rain had turned into a steady, freezing drizzle. I pulled my coat tighter around myself. It was the same coat Trent had mocked. Now, It was the only shield I had. I needed gas. My tank was hovering near empty. I pulled into a station on the corner of Main and 2nd. I inserted my debit card. Declined. I stared at the screen. I tried it again. Declined. See cashier. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on my neck. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Account status restricted. Reason security freeze. Reported fraud investigation. I called the customer service number immediately, standing there in the rain while other cars pulled in and out around me. I am sorry. Ms. Miller, the representative said, her voice tinny and distant. But because you flagged a transaction as unauthorized on your credit line, and there is now a pending legal dispute regarding large asset ownership linked to your Social Security number, our risk management algorithm has locked all associated accounts. We have to verify your identity and ensure no further assets are being moved illegally. How long will that take? I asked, my voice rising. I need to buy gas. I need to eat. Standard review is 7 to 10 business days, she recited. You will need to come into a branch with documentation. 7 to 10 days. I hung up. I stood there, holding a pump handle that refused to dispense fuel. I had $12 in cash in my wallet. That was it. I was a multimillionaire who could not afford 3 gallons of unleaded. I went inside and paid $10 for gas. I bought a bottle of water and a pack of peanut butter crackers with the remaining $2. That was my lunch. That was my dinner. I sat in my car, eating the dry crackers, watching the rain streak the windshield. This was how they broke you. It was not the big dramatic courtroom moments. It was this. It was the humiliation of counting pennies. It was the fear of the gaslight coming on. It was the knowledge that one flat tire would end my entire existence. My phone buzzed. It was an email, not from Thorne, from Trent. Subject: let's end this. Attached was a PDF. I opened it. It was a settlement agreement. The parties agreed to divide the lottery proceeds as follows: 50% to Harold and Linda Miller, 50% to Isla Miller, all lawsuits to be dismissed with prejudice, immediate release of funds, 50%, $75 million. If I signed this, the freeze would be lifted tomorrow. I could have $35 million in my account by the end of the week. I could buy a new car. I could buy a house. I could pay Thorne. I could eat a steak dinner. All I had to do was give them half. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. The hunger in my stomach was a powerful negotiator. Why fight for 100% and get nothing for 2 years? When I could have 50% right now, it was just money. Was it worth the misery? Was it worth living in a motel and eating crackers? I stared at the signature line. Isla Miller. I imagined signing it. I imagined the relief. I imagined calling my father and hearing him say, "Good girl. You finally came to your senses." And that is when the nausea hit me. If I signed this, I was admitting that they were right. I was admitting that I was weak. I was admitting that they owned me. I was admitting that the ticket was theirs, and they were just being generous enough to give me a cut. I remembered the Thanksgiving table. I remembered the laughter when they tossed me the ticket. You are worth $2. If I signed this, I would be agreeing with them. I would be confirming that my value was negotiable, dependent entirely on their permission. I looked at the dashboard of my car. The check engine light was flickering. My stomach was growling. I was cold. I was tired. I was alone. But I was not theirs. Not anymore. I hit delete. I started the engine. I had enough gas to get back to the lawyer's office, but I did not go there. I needed a different kind of solution. Thorne had mentioned something before I left. A last resort. Litigation funding. It was a predatory industry. Companies that loaned money to plaintiffs in high-stakes lawsuits in exchange for a massive chunk of the future settlement. The interest rates were usurious. The terms were draconian, but they gave you cash now to fight the war. I pulled into the library parking lot to use the free Wi-Fi. Since I could not afford to go over my data limit, I searched for litigation finance firms. I found one that specialized in inheritance and lottery disputes, Bridgepoint Capital. I applied online. I uploaded the photos of the ticket. I uploaded the copy of the lawsuit. I uploaded the screenshot of the lottery results. I called them. A shark named Davis answered. He listened to my story. He looked at the documents. We can advance you $200,000. Davis said, but if you win, we take $600,000 from the payout. If you lose, you owe us nothing. But we own the rights to sue your family for fraud to recover our loss. 3-to-1 returns. It was robbery. Send the contract. I said. I signed it electronically within the hour. The money would be wired to a new account at a different bank by the next morning. I had my war chest. I could pay Thorne. I could pay my rent. I could breathe. But as I sat there in the quiet library, surrounded by the smell of old paper and dust, I realized that money was not enough. Money just bought me a lawyer. Money just bought me time. My family was not playing by legal rules. They were playing dirty. They were using my history, my identity, and my emotions against me. They were willing to lie under oath. A lawyer could argue the law, but he could not argue against a coordinated family lie without ammunition. I needed leverage. I needed something that would make them terrified to step into a courtroom. I needed to know why they were so desperate. $75 million was a lot of money, but my father was a proud man. He cared about his reputation in the community almost as much as his bank account. Why was he willing to risk a public trial where his financial abuse might be exposed? Why was Trent so aggressive? There was a desperation in their speed that did not make sense. They filed for the injunction less than 12 hours after I left. That was panic. Panic meant secrets. I needed to dig, and I knew I could not do it myself. I was too close. I was being watched. I scrolled through my contacts. I went past the professional acquaintances, past the contractors, past the city council members. I stopped at a name I had not dialed in 4 years. Vance. Vance was a private investigator I had used once for a project at work. We needed to know if a developer was cutting corners on a brownfield cleanup. Vance had found out that the developer was dumping toxic waste in a wetland 3 counties over. He was good, he was expensive, and he hated bullies. I pressed call. It rang 5 times. Miller, a gruff voice answered. I saw your name on the news. I was wondering when you would call. You saw the story I asked. I saw that a winning ticket was sold on Magnolia, and I saw a lawsuit filed this morning with your name on it. Vance said, I can put 2 and 2 together. You are in deep water. Isla, I need you to find the bottom. Vance, I said, what are you looking for? I need a full financial autopsy on my father. Harold Miller. And my brother-in-law. Trent Sutherland. I want to know everything. Debts, loans, shell companies, gambling habits, mistresses. I want to know why they are trying to steal $150 million when they live in big houses and drive luxury cars. There was a silence on the line. I could hear the flick of a lighter. People with big houses often have big mortgages. Isla, Vance said, and people who steal from their own blood are usually running from something scary. Can you do it? I can do it, he said. But if I find something, you have to be ready to use it. I do not dig up skeletons just so you can rebury them. I looked at the empty passenger seat where the cruise brochure had been. I thought about the pending charge on my credit card. I am not going to rebury them. Vance, I said, I am going to put them on display. I will get started. Vance said, watch your back. Miller, desperate people do desperate things. I hung up. I looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The streetlights were flickering on. I was still hungry. I was still broke until the funding wire hit, but the fear was gone. They wanted a fight. They wanted to drag me into the mud. Fine, I would step into the mud, but I was bringing a shovel. The digital assault began at 6 a.m. on Tuesday. I was awake, staring at the textured ceiling of the motel room, listening to the trucks rumble past on the highway. I had slept for maybe 2 hours. My phone, which I had turned back on to check for the wire transfer from the litigation funding company, started to vibrate. It was not a text. It was not a call. It was a relentless, continuous buzzing. I picked it up. My lock screen was a blur of notifications. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, tagged in a video, comment, you are a monster, comment, give it back to your parents. You thief? Comment. Hope you rot. My stomach turned over. I unlocked the phone and opened the first notification. It was TikTok. The user was Tessa Style, my sister's account where she usually posted outfit checks and brunch photos. This time, it was just her face. No filter. Her eyes were red and swollen. She was sitting on the floor of our parents' living room, hugging a throw pillow. "Hey guys," she whispered, her voice cracking perfectly. "I do not usually do this. I try to keep things positive, but my family is going through something really hard right now." She sniffed, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "On Thanksgiving, my dad bought a lottery ticket. He has been buying them for 30 years. He gave it to my sister, Isla, to hold while we were eating dinner. We were laughing. We were happy. It was a family moment." She paused for dramatic effect. "It turned out to be the winner, $150 million, and the second Isla saw it, she ran. She literally ran out the door. She took our car keys. She took the ticket, and now she has lawyered up and is trying to claim she bought it herself." Tears spilled over her cheeks. Real tears. Tessa had always been able to cry on command. It was her superpower. My parents are devastated. Dad is heartbroken. He just wanted to pay off his mortgage and retire. We do not even care about the money. It is the betrayal. How can you do that to your own blood, Isla? If you are seeing this, please just come home. We forgive you. The video ended. I looked at the view count. 4.2 million views. It had been posted 5 hours ago. I clicked the comments. It was a slaughterhouse. Find her. What is her name? Isla Miller Knoxville. Right? Let us make her famous. I felt the blood drain from my face. They had weaponized the narrative. They knew they could not win in court with facts. So they were trying to win in the court of public opinion with emotion. They were painting me as the greedy, heartless daughter who stole from her elderly, saintly parents. I sat up, my hands shaking. I needed to call Thorne. I needed to issue a statement. But before I could dial, an incoming call took over the screen. Marcus, Civic Bloom, my boss. I swallowed hard and answered. "Marcus Ela." His voice was tight. He sounded like he was standing in the middle of a fire. "You need to explain to me why our Google business page has received 600 one-star reviews in the last hour." "Oh God," I whispered. "They are calling the main line." "Isla," Marcus continued. "The receptionist is in tears. People are screaming at her. They are accusing us of employing a thief. They are threatening to boycott the riverfront project. They are saying we are corrupt. It is a lie." "Marcus," I said, my voice rising. "My sister posted a video. It is a domestic dispute. I did not steal anything. I have proof. I believe you." Marcus said, and it hurt me to hear the hesitation in his voice. "But I have the city council calling me. The optics are toxic. We are a community-focused organization. We cannot have this kind of heat. What are you saying? I am putting you on administrative leave," he said, "effective immediately, indefinite, until this blows over or is resolved legally. Marcus, please, I need this job. I need the normalcy. I am sorry. Isla, do not come into the office. We will mail you your personal effects." The line went dead. I sat there, the phone warm in my hand. In the span of 10 minutes, I had lost my reputation and my livelihood. I was a pariah. I stood up and walked to the window. I peeked through the curtain. A car slowed down as it passed the motel room. The driver looked at the door numbers. Paranoia spiked in my chest like a fever. Did they know I was here? Had someone tracked the IP address? Or was I just seeing ghosts? I went to the bathroom. I washed my face, avoiding my own reflection. I put on a baseball cap I kept in my back seat. I put on my sunglasses. Even though it was overcast outside, I needed coffee. I needed to get out of this room before the walls closed in. I drove to a drive-through coffee shop 3 towns over, afraid to show my face in Knoxville proper. When I handed the cashier my cash, I kept my head down. "Is that," she started to say. My heart stopped. "Is that a new convertible over there?" she finished, looking past me. "No," I croaked. "Just a car." I grabbed the coffee and sped away. I was living like a fugitive. I was the villain in a movie I did not agree to star in. I parked in the lot of a big box store, using their Wi-Fi to check my messages. I had to document this. Thorne had said to document everything. I took screenshots of the video. I took screenshots of the comments threatening violence. I know where she works. Let's go say hi. She needs to be taught a lesson. Then, the text came. Mom. It is getting crazy out there, isn't it? Tessa is so emotional. I tried to tell her not to post it, but you know how she is. Just sign the agreement. Isla, come home. We will make a follow-up video explaining it was a misunderstanding. The hate will stop instantly. We can fix this. It was blackmail. Pure and simple. Give us the money, and we will call off the mob. I typed a response, then deleted it. I typed another one. Go to hell. I deleted that too. I did not reply. I took a screenshot of her message. I saved it to a folder labeled evidence. I was not going to break. They wanted me to panic. They wanted me to run back to the safety of their approval, but their approval was a cage. My phone buzzed again. An encrypted email notification. Sender Vance Investigations. Subject: The Hole. I opened it. There was no greeting. Just a PDF attachment and a short line of text. You were right. It is worse than you thought. Call me. I dialed Vance immediately. I'm looking at the file. I said, start with page 4. Vance said. His voice was grim. I scrolled down. It was a credit report summary. Not for my father. For me. My eyes widened. Discover card. Opened 6 months ago. Limit 20,000. Maxed out. Chase Sapphire. Opened 4 months ago. Limit 15,000. Maxed out. Personal loan. SoFi. $50,000. Dispersed to an account ending in 552. That is not my account. I whispered. I know. Vance said. I traced the routing number. It is a joint account held by Harold Miller and Trent Sutherland. They had been using my identity for months. The cruise charge was just the tip of the iceberg. They had built an entire financial ecosystem on my credit score because theirs was radioactive. Keep going, Vance said. Look at the real estate. I scrolled to page 10. My parents' house. The house I grew up in. The house they claimed was their pride and joy. Status notice of default filed. Auction date November 30th. I looked at the date on my phone. Today was the 26th. 4 days. They have 4 days. Vance said. They have not paid the mortgage in 8 months. The bank has already foreclosed. The auction is scheduled for next Monday. They are going to lose the house. Isla. I sat back in my car seat. The realization hitting me like a physical slap. The cruise, the laughter, the arrogance. It was all a facade. They were drowning. They were completely, utterly insolvent. That is why they needed the ticket. I said, it is not about greed. I mean, it is, but it is panic. They need the cash to pay off the bank before Monday. Exactly, Vance said. And here's the kicker. Trent, he is in deeper. He owes money to some private lenders, the kind that do not use credit scores. He leveraged the house equity with a second lien that your father signed off on. They gambled everything on some investment scheme that imploded last week. The picture was complete. The Thanksgiving dinner was not a celebration. It was a wake. They were standing on the edge of a cliff, holding hands. When the ticket appeared, they did not see a gift for me. They saw a parachute for themselves. And the cruise, I asked, why buy a cruise if they are losing the house? Vance laughed. A dark, cynical sound. Denial is a powerful drug. Or maybe they planned to run. Or maybe they just wanted one last taste of the high life before the lights went out. But that charge on your card, that was desperate. They had tapped out every other source. You were the last vein to bleed. I looked at the notice of default again. November 30th. They were on a deadline. Everything made sense now. The speed of the lawsuit, the viciousness of the video, the blackmail. They were not just trying to get rich. They were trying to survive. If they did not get access to that money by Monday, or at least a settlement they could borrow against, they were homeless. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. For 30 years. I thought my family was powerful. I thought they were better than me. I thought they judged me because I was not successful enough. But they were not powerful. They were broke. Lying grifters who had cannibalized their own daughter to keep the lights on. They were not negotiating from a position of strength. They were negotiating from a position of absolute terror. And they had made one fatal mistake. They thought the internet mob would break me. They thought losing my job would break me. They thought I would crumble under the pressure of being the bad guy. But they forgot that I was a project manager. I dealt with failing structures every day. I knew how to look at a building that was about to collapse and identify the exact load-bearing wall that was giving way. Isla Vance asked. "You there? I am here," I said. "You have enough here to send them to prison for 20 years. Vance said. "Identity theft, wire fraud, bank fraud." "I know." I said, "So what do you want to do?" "Hand this to the police." I looked at the photo of Tessa crying on TikTok. I looked at the comments calling for my head. "No." I said, "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because the police take too long." I said, "And the bank auction is in 4 days." I started the car engine. "They want to play games with public opinion. Fine. They want to set a deadline. Fine. I am not going to arrest them. Vance, I am going to buy them." "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, shifting the car into gear, "I am going to find out who holds the note on that mortgage, and I am going to see if they are willing to sell the debt." Vance was silent for a moment. "That is cold." "Miller." "No," I said, pulling out of the parking lot. "It is just business." I drove toward the highway. The fear of the internet mob had evaporated. The shame of losing my job was gone. All that was left was the clarity of the mission. They had tried to bury me, but they forgot that I was the one who knew how to dig. And I was about to dig the ground right out from under their feet. The digital file Vance sent me was not just a PDF, it was an autopsy of a murder. The victim was my financial future, and the murderers were sitting in my parents' living room, drinking wine and posting videos about family values. I sat in my rental car, parked in the back corner of a deserted strip mall lot. The rain had started again, drumming a relentless rhythm on the roof. I opened the file on my tablet. The glow of the screen illuminated the dark cabin. Page 1 was the credit card fraud. I had known about the cruise. That was the headline. But the details were the fine print that cut the deepest. Vance had pulled the transaction history for the 3 fraudulent cards opened in my name: the Discover card, the Chase Sapphire, and a high-interest Amex. June 12th, Restoration Hardware, $4,200. Item Italian leather sectional sofa. I closed my eyes. I remembered that sofa. I had sat on it during the 4th of July barbecue. My mother had bragged about it. She said Harold had picked it out to update the den. She said it was an investment in quality. I was sitting on my own debt. I had complimented them on a piece of furniture that I had unknowingly paid for. August 3rd, Napa Valley Reserve, $3,800. Transaction weekend tasting package and lodging. That was Tessa's anniversary weekend. She had posted photos of herself and Trent holding crystal glasses against a backdrop of rolling vineyards. The caption had read, "Blessed to live this life." They stole my identity to pay for their likes. It went on and on. Golf clubs for my father, a designer handbag for Tessa, a set of new tires for the SUV. They had not just used my credit for emergencies. They had used it for lifestyle maintenance. They had been bleeding me dry. $50 here, $5,000 there. Confident that I would never check my credit report because I was the responsible, boring daughter who paid her bills on autopay and never applied for new loans. But this was just the petty theft. The real horror story started on page 12, the house. My parents had paid off their mortgage 6 years ago. It was the one thing my father was truly arrogant about. "We own our dirt." He used to say. Vance's report showed a different reality. 8 months ago, a home equity line of credit was opened on the property, a HELOC. It allowed them to borrow against the value of the house. The limit was $400,000. Current balance, $400,000. Available credit 0. They had drained the equity of their home in less than a year. Where did the money go? It did not go into the house. The roof still leaked. The The kitchen was dated. Vance had traced the wire transfers. April 2nd, wire transfer, $100,000. Recipient T. S. Ventures, LLC. May 15th, wire transfer, $150,000. Recipient T. S. Ventures, LLC. July 1st, wire transfer, $150,000. Recipient T. S. Ventures, LLC. T. S. Ventures, Trent Sutherland. I scrolled to the corporate breakdown Vance had included. T. S. Ventures was a shell company registered in Delaware. Its sole officer was Trent Sutherland, and T. S. Ventures had exactly one outgoing transaction of note: a single, massive transfer of $380,000 to a company called Blockchain Zenith. I did not need Vance's notes to know what that was. I remembered reading about it in the news. It was a high-yield crypto investment platform that had promised 40% returns per month. It was a Ponzi scheme. It had collapsed 3 weeks ago. The founders were in Dubai. The money was gone. The puzzle pieces snapped together with a sickening click. Trent had convinced my father to bet the house. He had probably sold it as a sure thing. Double your money. Harold, retirement in style. My father, greedy and desperate to maintain his image of wealth, had signed the papers. He had handed over the deed to his house to his son-in-law, and they lost it all. That was why the foreclosure notice was filed. That was why they were desperate for the lottery ticket. They were not just trying to steal from me. They were trying to cover up a catastrophic failure before the neighbors found out. My father was not an innocent victim of Trent's charm. He was a co-conspirator. He had signed the HELOC. He had authorized the transfers. He knew exactly what they were doing, and when it all blew up, instead of taking responsibility, he had turned to me. He decided that his daughter's lucky windfall was his bailout. He was willing to destroy my reputation and sue me into bankruptcy to cover his own gambling loss. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was different from the hurt I felt before. This was clarity. I needed to see it. I needed physical proof. Digital files were one thing, but I needed something I could hold in my hand. I started the car. It was nearly midnight. I drove to my parents' neighborhood. It was a quiet suburb of manicured lawns and brick facades, the kind of place where people kept their secrets behind heavy drapes. I parked 3 houses down. I pulled my hood up. I walked along the sidewalk, keeping to the shadows. The house was dark. They were probably asleep, dreaming of the settlement money they thought I would sign over tomorrow. I walked up the driveway. My heart was hammering against my ribs. If they saw me, they would call the police. They would say I was harassing them. I went to the mailbox. It was a heavy brick structure at the end of the driveway. I opened it. Empty. I looked down at the base of the mailbox. There was a thick shrub, an overgrown boxwood that my father usually kept trimmed perfectly. I reached into the branches. My fingers brushed against wet paper. I pulled it out. It was a bundle of envelopes, soaked from the rain but still legible. Certified mail. Final notice, Bank of America. Notice of acceleration, County Court. Summons for foreclosure. He was hiding them. My father was hiding the mail in the bushes so my mother would not see them, or perhaps so the neighbors would not see the mailman delivering certified letters. It was pathetic. It was the behavior of a child hiding a bad report card. I took pictures of the envelopes with my phone, the flash illuminating the stark red letters warning of imminent seizure. Then I heard a noise. I froze. It was not from the house. It was from the side yard. A voice, low and angry. I crept closer. Crouching behind the SUV, parked in the driveway, the rental car they had flaunted on Thanksgiving. It was Trent. He was standing on the back patio, smoking a cigarette. He was on the phone. I held my breath. I pulled out my phone and hit record. "You do not understand," Trent was saying. His voice was a harsh whisper. "The old man is cracking. He is ready to fold. If Isla does not sign by Friday, we are done." Silence. He was listening to the person on the other end. "Yeah, I know the plan," Trent snapped. "Look, as soon as the wire hits, I am out. I transfer my cut to the Cayman account and I am gone. I am not sticking around for the fallout. Tessa, please. She is a liability. She can sink with the ship. I just need the bridge loan to clear so I can buy the ticket out. My hand shook. He was not just scamming my father. He was planning to abandon his wife. He was going to take the settlement money he thought he would get from me, and leave Tessa to deal with the foreclosure and the debt. The person on the other end of the line was his exit strategy, maybe a mistress, maybe a partner in crime. I did not care who it was. I had the recording. Tessa. She can sink with the ship. I stopped the recording. Trent flicked his cigarette butt into my mother's prize-winning hydrangeas and went back inside. The sliding glass door clicked shut. The lock turned. I stood there in the dark. I had come here feeling like a victim. I was leaving with a nuclear weapon. I walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at the evidence I had gathered. I had the bank records showing they stole my identity. I had the wire transfers showing they gambled away their home. I had the foreclosure notices proving they were days away from eviction. And I had the recording of Trent Sutherland admitting he was going to rob the family and run. I thought about Tessa. She was cruel. She was vain. She had posted that video tearing me apart, but she was also being played. She was sleeping next to a man who looked at her and saw an anchor he was waiting to cut loose. And my father? He was a bully. But he was a bully who had been tricked by a bigger predator. I could go to the police right now. I could hand this all over. They would be arrested. The media would have a field day. Lottery family fraud ring exposed. But that was too easy. That was just law. I wanted justice, and justice required a specific kind of venue. I did not want to win in a courtroom where the only witnesses were a stenographer and a judge. I wanted to win looking them in the eye. I wanted to see the moment the lie died. I needed to get them all in one room. I needed a setting that they could not walk away from, a setting that appealed to their vanity. I pulled out my phone and dialed Thorne's number. It was late, but I knew he would be awake. Lawyers like him never slept when there was money on the table. Thorne, he answered on the first ring. I am ready to settle. I said. There was a pause. You are, yes, I lied, but I have conditions. Name them. I want a meeting, face to face, to sign the papers. We can do that at my office, Thorne said. No, I said, not an office. That is too sterile. I want dinner. Dinner, Thorne sounded confused. Bellamy's. I said, the restaurant on the top floor of the Sunsphere Tower. Private dining room. Tomorrow night at 7. Isla, Thorne warned. This is highly irregular. I do not care, I said. Tell them I am ready to sign the 50-50 split. Tell them I am tired of fighting. Tell them they won. But tell them if they want the signature, they have to eat with me. The whole family. Harold, Linda, Tessa, Trent, and their lawyer. You are up to something, Thorne said. Just book the room. Elias, I said, and bring a notary. We are going to need one. I hung up. I looked at the photos of the foreclosure notices one last time. They wanted a show I would give them a finale. I drove back to the motel. The fear was gone. The anxiety was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard calculation of a project manager preparing for a controlled demolition. I was going to bring the whole house down, and I was going to make sure I was the only one standing when the dust settled. The best lies are 90% truth. I was tired. I was exhausted. I was on the edge of a breakdown. So when I dialed my mother's number at 8 o'clock that morning, I did not have to act very hard. I just let the fatigue in my bones seep into my voice. I let it ring 3 times. She picked up on the 4th. She was making me wait, establishing dominance even before saying hello. Hello? Her voice was sharp, impatient. Mom, I said. I let my voice crack. Just a little. Just enough. Isla, I cannot do this anymore. I said, I am done. The internet, the people calling my job. I cannot take it. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence where I could practically hear her smiling. I told you, Isla, she said, her voice shifting instantly to that soothing, suffocating tone she used when I was sick as a child. We never wanted this to get ugly. We just wanted what was fair. I know, I whispered. I want a sign. I heard her exhale, a release of tension that sounded like air escaping a tire. Oh, thank God, she said. You are making the right choice. Honey, we can put all this nastiness behind us. Trent has the papers ready. Come over to the house. No, I said, not the house. Why not? Because I do not want to see the neighbors. I said, I do not want to see where I grew up right now. I want to do this somewhere neutral, somewhere nice, like a proper family. Okay, she said slowly. Where were you thinking Bellamy's? I said, Bellamy's was the most expensive restaurant in Knoxville. It sat at the top of the Sunsphere Tower. A gold glass ball in the sky with a 360-degree view of the city. It was where my father took clients when he wanted to impress them. It was where Trent took Tessa when he wanted to apologize for maxing out a credit card. It was a place of performance, the private dining room. I added, the one with the view of the river. 7 o'clock tonight. That is short notice. Linda said, I do not know if we can get a reservation. I already booked it. I said. She paused. She was impressed. She liked that I was taking initiative to surrender in style. Okay, she said. That sounds lovely. A celebration dinner. And Mom. I said, everyone has to be there. You, Dad, Tessa, Trent, and bring your lawyer. Why do we need the lawyer? Because I want to sign everything tonight. I said, I want it legally binding so nobody can change their mind later. I want it over. Smart girl, she said. See, you are thinking clearly again. We will be there. I hung up. The trap was set. Now I just had to dig the pit. I drove straight to Elias Thorne's office. I did not look like a woman who had just surrendered. I looked like a general inspecting the armory. Thorne was waiting for me. He had the coffee ready. You look terrifying, he said. Good. I said, did you get it? He slid a thick folder across the desk. It was not easy, Thorne said, and it was certainly not cheap. We used a significant portion of the litigation funding as a down payment. But as of an hour ago, the Phoenix Trust, which you control, is the primary holder of the non-performing note on your parents' property. I opened the folder. There it was. The assignment of mortgage. My parents' bank had been all too happy to offload a toxic asset that was days away from a messy foreclosure auction. They did not care who paid the debt. As long as they got their money, Thorne had set up the blind trust, the Phoenix Trust, to step in and buy the debt. Technically, I now owned my parents' house, or rather, I owned the right to take it from them. And the second lien I asked, the one Trent took out, Thorne nodded. We bought that too. It was held by a private hard money lender who was panicking because Trent had stopped returning his calls. He sold the debt to us for 60 cents on the dollar just to get out. I ran my hand over the paper. It felt heavier than regular paper. It felt like a gavel. So I control everything. I said, you control the timeline, Thorne corrected. You can stop the foreclosure, or you can accelerate it. You are the bank now. Isla. Perfect. I said, now, about the guest list. Thorne said, I spoke to the forensic accountant you hired, the bank representative. Yes, Mr. Henderson. He is a former fraud investigator for the IRS who now consults for the bank. He has agreed to attend. He thinks this is highly unorthodox, but he will come. He will come because he wants to see Trent Sutherland's face when the hammer drops. Thorne said, apparently, he has been chasing Trent's shell companies for a while. What about the notary, I asked. I hired a mobile notary, Thorne said. A woman named Sarah. She is strict. She follows the book. She will not let them bully you into signing anything without reading it. I stood up. One last thing. Elias. I said, I need you to draft a new settlement agreement, the one where you give them half no. I said, the one where I give them nothing. But I want it to look like the one they sent me. Same font, same layout, but the terms are different. Thorne smiled. A slow, shark-like smile. I will have it ready by 5. He said. I left the office and drove to meet Vance. We met in the back of an electronics store parking lot. It felt fitting. He handed me a heavy black portfolio case. This is the nuclear football, Vance said. He opened it. Inside were high-resolution prints of every document we had found. The credit card statements, the wire transfers, the foreclosure notices I had pulled from the bushes, the photos of the certified mail. And on a USB drive taped to the inside cover was the audio recording of Trent. I also added something extra. Vance said. He pulled out a sheet of paper that looked like a stream of code. What is this? I asked. Metadata, Vance said. If they try to claim the recording is a deepfake or AI generated, this proves it is not. It shows the device ID, the timestamp, the GPS coordinates of your parents' backyard, and the unique acoustic fingerprint of the microphone. It is admissible in court. It is bulletproof. You thought of everything. I said, I hate liars. Vance said, go get them. Miller, I had the weapon. I had the battlefield. Now, I needed the armor. I drove to the mall. I walked into the high-end department store that Tessa always bragged about shopping in. The one I usually avoided because the sales clerks looked at my work boots with disdain. Today, I did not care. I went to the personal shopper department. I need a suit. I told the woman at the desk. What kind of suit, she asked, looking at my jeans. Job interview, no. I said, I am hosting a hostile takeover. She blinked. Then she grinned. Right this way. I spent 2 hours in the dressing room. I tried on dresses that made me look soft. I tried on skirts that made me look eager. Then I found it. It was a pantsuit. Deep, midnight blue, almost black. The fabric was Italian wool, sharp and structured. The jacket had a tailored waist and shoulders that looked like they could cut glass. It was not a suit for a project manager. It was a suit for a CEO. I bought a pair of stilettos, 4 inches, steel heels. I usually wore steel toe boots. But tonight, I needed a different kind of steel. I went to a salon. I told them to cut my hair. It had been long and messy, usually tied back in a ponytail. I told them to chop it, a sharp, angled bob, sleek, modern, no place to hide my face. When I looked in the mirror, I did not recognize the woman staring back. She did not look like Isla Miller, the girl who fixed sidewalks and apologized for taking up space. She looked like a predator. Her eyes were lined with coal. Her lips were painted a dark, matte red. I checked my watch. 6:30. It was time. I drove to the Sunsphere Tower. The rain had stopped, and the city lights were reflecting off the wet pavement. I handed my keys to the valet. He looked at the rental car. Then he looked at me. He opened the door with a reverence I was not used to. I took the elevator up. My ears popped as we ascended. The maitre d' was waiting. Ms. Miller, he said, your party has arrived. They are in the gold room. Are they all there? I asked. Yes, ma'am. And the gentleman you requested to arrive later. Mr. Henderson, he is waiting in the bar area for your signal. Excellent, I said. And the security? 2 guards are stationed outside the hallway, he said. Discreet, but available. I nodded. I walked down the hallway. I could hear them before I saw them. They were laughing. It was the same laugh from Thanksgiving. The same exclusive, self-satisfied sound that meant they thought they had won. They thought they had broken the horse. They were probably already spending the money in their heads. I stopped at the door. I smoothed the lapel of my jacket. I touched the hidden pocket where the lottery ticket sat, wrapped in plastic, right next to my heart. I was not nervous. That was the strange part. My heart was beating slow and steady. I thought about the $2 ticket. I thought about the cruise. I thought about the way my mother looked at me when she told me to scratch it. You are worth $2. Tonight, I was going to show them exactly what I was worth. I signaled the waiter. Open the door, I said. He pushed the heavy mahogany doors open. The laughter cut off instantly. They were all sitting around a round table set with white linen and crystal. Harold, Linda, Tessa, Trent, and a man I did not recognize, presumably their lawyer. They looked up. For a second, nobody spoke. They were staring at me. They were looking for the girl in the muddy jeans and the old coat. They were looking for the victim. She was not there. I walked into the room. The click of my heels on the marble floor was the only sound. Hello, family, I said. My voice was low, smooth, and completely devoid of warmth. Isla Tessa whispered, "You cut your hair." I pulled out the chair at the head of the table, the spot usually reserved for my father. I sat down. I placed the black portfolio case on the table. I placed the folder from Thorn on top of it. I looked at them, one by one. Harold looked smug. Linda looked relieved. Trent looked bored but eager. "I am glad you could all make it," I said. "We are just glad you came to your senses." "Darling," Linda said, reaching for her wine glass. "We ordered some appetizers. The calamari is to die for. I did not come here to eat." "Mom," I said. I motioned to the waiter. "Pour the champagne," I said. "The expensive bottle." Harold grinned. "That is the spirit." "Isla, celebrate. We are going to be a very rich family." I watched the bubbles rise in the flute. "Yes," I said. "We are going to settle everything tonight. Every debt, every lie, every single dollar." I picked up my glass. "To the truth," I said. They hesitated, then raised their glasses. "To the truth," they echoed, having no idea that they had just toasted their own execution. I took a sip. It was cold and crisp. I set the glass down. Thorn, my lawyer, walked in from the shadows of the corner where he had been standing. Unseen. "This is Mr. Thorn," I said. "He has the paperwork." Their lawyer, a sweaty man in an ill-fitting suit, stood up. "I have the agreement right here," he said, waving a document. "Standard 50-50 split. Mutual release of claims. Sit down," I said. He froze. "We are not using your agreement." I said, "We are using mine." Trent laughed. "It is the same thing, isn't it? 50-50. Just sign the damn paper." "Isla?" I looked at Trent. I looked him right in the eyes. I smiled. "Who said anything about 50-50, I asked. The room went quiet again. The air pressure dropped. They looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the flicker of doubt in my father's eyes. He realized, too late, that the woman sitting at the head of the table was not the daughter he had bullied. She was the project manager, and she had just locked the doors. I checked my watch. 7:15. "Let us begin," I said. I opened the portfolio. They thought this was a victory dinner. For me, it was a trial, and the verdict was already in. The waiter placed a platter of oysters Rockefeller in the center of the table. The smell of baked spinach, butter, and Pernod filled the private dining room, masking the scent of the desperate greed radiating from my family. They were eating as if they had not eaten in days. Or perhaps they were eating as if they knew this was the last meal they would ever enjoy at this altitude. Harold, my father, was already on his second glass of scotch. He swirled the amber liquid, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city lights of Knoxville spread out below us. "You know," he said, gesturing with his glass, "I always said this family was destined for greatness. We just needed the capital to unlock it. This view, this is where we belong. Not down there with the ants." He looked at me. His eyes were glassy. "You finally look the part. Isla. That suit, the hair, it is amazing what a little pressure does. It turns coal into diamonds. I told your mother you just needed a push." I picked up my water glass. "A push?" I repeated flatly. "Is that what you call it? Tough love." "Sweetheart," Linda chimed in. She was dissecting a lobster tail with a fervor that was almost violent. "We had to be hard on you. You were drifting, working that dirty job, driving that terrible car. We wanted you to step up, and look at you now, sitting at the head of the table." She smiled, a piece of lobster meat stuck in her teeth. "We are proud of you for doing the right thing." Isla. Trent was not eating. He was leaning back in his chair, one arm draped over the back of Tessa's chair, the other hand toying with his phone. He was playing the role of the benevolent monarch, the coordinator, the man who had brokered the peace. He winked at me. "It is a good night. Isla, we have a lot of planning to do. Once the funds are released, I have lined up a wealth management team. Top-tier guys. They handle professional athletes. We are going to diversify. Real estate, crypto, emerging markets. You will not have to worry about a thing." I looked at Tessa. She was taking a selfie with her champagne glass, angling her face to catch the light. "I am going to Paris," she murmured, more to her phone than to us. "First class. I deserve a break after this week. The stress has been unreal." They were delusional. They were drowning in debt, days away from losing their home, and yet, in their minds, the money was already in the bank. They had spent it 10 times over before the ink was even wet. Their lawyer, the sweaty man in the ill-fitting suit, whose name turned out to be Mr. Blanton, cleared his throat. He reached into his briefcase. "Shall we get to the business at hand?" he asked. "I know everyone is eager to celebrate properly." He slid a thick document across the white tablecloth. It stopped in front of me. I looked at it. The cover page read, "Family Asset Consolidation and Management Agreement." "I thought we agreed on the standard settlement," I said, not touching the paper. 50-50? Harold chuckled. He exchanged a look with Trent. "Well," Blanton said, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief, "we reviewed the structure, Ms. Miller. Given the complexity of the situation, and the fact that your father purchased the ticket, and the emotional distress the family has suffered due to your initial refusal," he trailed off. "What is he saying?" I asked, looking at Trent. Trent sat up. "Look, Isla, be realistic. You are a project manager. You make, what, $80,000 a year. You do not know how to handle $75 million. You would be a target. We are protecting you." He tapped the document. "The new terms are simple. The entire winning amount goes into the Miller Family Trust. Dad and I are the trustees. You get a guaranteed stipend of $20,000 a month for life, plus a lump sum of $2 million right now to buy a house or whatever you want." My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained a mask of ice. $20,000 a month, I said. "That is $240,000 a year. Tax-free," Harold added quickly. "It is a generous allowance." "Isla, you will never have to work again. You can quit that job, and I do not know, take up painting. And the rest I asked, the other $148 million, it stays in the trust." Trent said, "For investment, for the family legacy. It is better this way." I looked down at the paper. They had baited me with 50-50 to get me in the room, and now they were switching to a 99-1 split because they thought I was broken. They thought I was so terrified of the internet mob and the lawsuits that I would take crumbs just to make the pain stop. I reached out and took the pen from Blanton's hand. It was a heavy, expensive fountain pen. "Isla," Elias Thorne said from the corner of the room. His voice was a warning. "You do not have to sign that." I silenced him with a raised hand. "It is okay." "Elias," I said, "I understand their position. They just want to protect the legacy." Linda let out a sigh of relief. "See, she is sensible. I knew she would come around." I uncapped the pen. I held the tip just above the signature line. My hand trembled slightly. I let them see the tremble. I wanted them to think it was fear. They leaned in, all of them. Harold, Linda, Tessa, Trent. They were like wolves watching a wounded deer finally collapse. Their eyes were fixed on the tip of the pen. I hesitated. "There is just one thing," I said softly. What Trent snapped. "Just sign it." "Isla, the cruise." I said. The room blinked. What Linda asked. "The Royal Horizon cruise." I said, looking up. "The one you booked on Thanksgiving. The one that cost $7,240.50. "Oh, for heaven's sake." Harold groaned. "We told you. Isla, we will pay you back. You get $2 million in cash upon signing. Take the $7,000 out of that. Don't be petty." I put the cap back on the pen. "I just want to be clear about the accounting," I said, "because if I am signing away my rights, I need to know exactly what I'm paying for." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small remote control. I pointed it at the large flat-screen television mounted on the wall behind Trent, which had been displaying a silent loop of a burning fireplace. I pressed the button. The fireplace vanished. In its place, a high-resolution image appeared. It was a bank statement. Chase Sapphire Reserve. Cardholder Isla Miller. Authorized user none. I pressed the button again. Transaction Royal Horizon Cruise Lines. Method manual entry. IP address 192.168.1.45. I press the button again. Device location 42 Oakwood Drive. The residence of Harold and Linda Miller. The room was deadly silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the service bar. "What is this?" Tessa whispered. I stood up. I walked slowly around the table toward the screen. "This," I said, "is the forensic digital trail of a felony." I pressed the button again. An image of a credit card application appeared. Date June 12th. Applicant Isla Miller. Income stated $300,000. Signature Isla Miller. I tapped the screen where the signature was. "That is not my handwriting." I said, "I loop my L's. This person crosses them straight." I looked at my mother. "You always hated my handwriting, didn't you?" "Mom, you said it was messy. So when you forged my name to open a credit line to buy that leather sofa, you used your own penmanship. You tried to make it look like mine, but you forgot the muscle memory." Linda's face had gone the color of ash. "I needed new furniture," she stammered. "Your father's back." I pressed the button again. A new document appeared. A wire transfer. Amount $150,000. From Harold Miller, HELOC, to TS Ventures, LLC. Harold dropped his glass. It hit the table, but did not break. Whiskey spilled onto the white tablecloth, spreading like a brown stain. "And this," I said, turning to Trent. "This is interesting. TS Ventures, a shell company." I pressed the button. Outgoing wire, TS, Ventures to Blockchain Zenith. Status failed, /recoverable amount 0. Trent stood up so fast his chair knocked over. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. His voice was no longer smooth. It was a snarl. "That is private financial information. You hacked me. That is illegal." I smiled. "I did not hack you. Trent, I bought the debt." What I looked at my father. "You took out a home equity line of credit on the house. Dad, $400,000. You gave it to Trent to invest. He lost it. And now, the bank wants their money." I pressed the button one last time. The screen filled with the foreclosure notice I had pulled from the bushes. Auction date, November 30th. "You hid this from Mom, didn't you?" I asked. "You hid it in the bushes." Linda turned to Harold. Her eyes were wide, terrified. "Harold, is that true?" The house Harold could not speak. He was staring at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "It is gone. Mom," I said, "the house is gone. The money is gone. The credit is gone." "You bitch!" Linda screamed. She slammed her hands on the table, rattling the silverware. "I am your mother. We raised you. We gave you life. How dare you investigate us? How dare you embarrass us like this?" I looked at her. I felt nothing. No fear, no guilt, no love. Just a cold, hard clarity. The law does not have a clause for maternal exemption. "Linda," I said, "you committed identity theft. You committed wire fraud. And you tried to extort me." I turned to Trent. "And you?" I said, "You were planning to take the settlement money and run to the Caymans." Isla Tessa shrieked. "Stop lying. Trent loves me." "Does he?" I asked. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket. "I do not have to play the audio, Tessa, but I can tell you what he said." "He said you were a liability. He said you could sink with the ship." "You are lying," Trent yelled. He lunged toward me. I did not flinch. I simply raised my hand and snapped my fingers. "Waiter," I said calmly, "please invite the guests in." Trent stopped. He looked at the door. The heavy mahogany doors swung open, but it was not a waiter with dessert. 2 men walked in. The first was tall, wearing a gray suit that looked like it was made of iron. He carried a briefcase. This was Mr. Henderson. The second man was dressed in a standard police uniform. He stood by the door, his hand resting on his belt. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Harold slumped in his chair. Linda covered her mouth with her hand. Who are they, Blanton?" "Their lawyer," squeaked Mr. Henderson walked to the table. He did not look at the family. He looked at me. "Mrs. Miller?" he said. Mr. Henderson, I replied. He placed his briefcase on the table, right on top of the spilled whiskey. He opened it. He pulled out a stack of files. I am representing the fraud division of First National Bank, Henderson said. His voice was dry, professional, and terrifying. We received a detailed dossier regarding multiple accounts opened under the name of Isla Miller, as well as irregular activity regarding the mortgage on the property at 42 Oakwood Drive. He looked at Trent. Mr. Sutherland, he said, we also have questions regarding TIS Ventures and its solicitation of funds from senior citizens for unregistered securities. Trent's face went white. I can explain. Trent stammered. It was an investment club. It was Henderson held up a hand. You can explain it in a deposition. Mr. Sutherland, or to the district attorney. He turned to Harold. Mr. Miller, the bank has accelerated the note on your home due to fraud in the application process. The equity line was obtained by overstating income. That is a federal crime. Harold put his head in his hands. I looked at the table. The oysters were untouched. The champagne was flat. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the suffocating weight of reality. I picked up the fountain pen again. I twirled it between my fingers. Isla. Linda wept. Please, please stop this. We are family. We made a mistake. Just sign the paper. Give us the money. We can fix this. We can pay them back. I looked at her. She was begging, not for forgiveness, but for a bailout. She still thought money could fix who she was. I looked at the document they wanted me to sign, the one that gave me an allowance, the one that put them in charge. I stood up. I walked over to Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson, I said, who owns the debt on the house now? You do, Mrs. Miller, he said. Through the Phoenix Trust, you purchased the non-performing note this afternoon, and the second lien also yours. I turned back to my family. Did you hear that I asked? I own the house. I own the debt. I own the sofa you are sitting on. Mom, I own the car you drove here. Trent, I leaned over the table, placing my hands flat on the white cloth. I am not signing your settlement. I said. I picked up the contract Blanton had brought. I ripped it in half. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I dropped the pieces on the table. Now we are going to sign my paperwork, I said. I nodded to Thorne. He stepped forward and pulled the thin document from his jacket pocket. He placed it in the center of the table. What is that? Harold whispered. It is a confession. I said, it states that the lottery ticket belongs to Isla Miller. It states that you unknowingly used her credit card and agree to repay the full amount. It states that you withdraw all lawsuits immediately. And it states that you acknowledge that I am the sole owner of the mortgage on your home. And if we do not sign, Trent sneered, though his voice was shaking. I looked at the police officer by the door. Then Mr. Henderson hands his file to Officer Reynolds. I said, and you all leave here in handcuffs. Tonight. I looked at Tessa. Even you. Tessa, you spent the money on the cards. You are an accessory. Tessa let out a sob. I sat back down at the head of the table. I picked up my glass of champagne. I took a sip. So, I said, who wants the pen first? The silence that followed was not the silence of a library. It was the silence of a guillotine blade hanging at the top of its arc. I waited, and then, with a shaking hand, my father reached for the pen. Harold held the pen, the nib hovering over the paper, but he did not sign. His hand was trembling so violently that the ink was starting to bleed into a dark, shapeless blot on the signature line. He looked like a man waking up from a long, expensive dream into a cold, concrete reality. Wait, Trent said, his voice tight. Dad, put the pen down. We do not need to sign this. She is bluffing. She cannot own the debt. That takes weeks of underwriting. She is just trying to scare you. Mr. Henderson, the man in the gray suit who had walked in with the police officer, cleared his throat. It was a dry, dusty sound, like shuffling papers. I assure you, Mr. Sutherland, there is no bluffing involved, Henderson said. He opened the file he had placed on the table. The Phoenix Trust executed the purchase of the non-performing note at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The wire transfer has cleared. The bank has assigned all rights to the trust. And since Ms. Miller is the sole beneficiary of that trust, she is, effectively, your landlord. He turned a page in the file, the sound crisp in the silent room. But that is not the only irregularity we found. Henderson continued, looking at Harold. Mr. Miller, were you aware that the draw requests on your home equity line of credit were submitted digitally using an IP address registered to a burner phone? Harold blinked, his eyes red-rimmed and watery. What Harold croaked. No, Trent handled the paperwork. He said he needed to move the money quickly to secure the buy-in for the investment. He said it was standard procedure. Henderson nodded slowly. Standard procedure for embezzlement. Perhaps. He pulled out a spreadsheet and slid it across the table. It stopped right in front of Harold, next to the spilled whiskey. We traced the flow of funds. Henderson said, $400,000 was moved from your house to TS Ventures. From there, it did not go to any registered securities exchange. It went to a private offshore entity in the Cayman Islands, and 10% of it, $40,000, was withdrawn in cash at various ATMs in Knoxville over the last 3 months. Harold looked at the spreadsheet. He looked at the dates. Trent Harold said, his voice trembling. You said the money was locked in the bond market. You said we could not touch it for a year. Trent stood up, adjusting his jacket. He was sweating now, a sheen of perspiration on his upper lip. It is complicated. Harold, Trent said, forcing a smile that looked like a rictus of pain. This guy, he does not understand high-level finance. The cash withdrawals were for operational expenses. You have to grease wheels to get into these exclusive funds. I told you that. Grease wheels, I asked from the head of the table. I picked up the remote control again. I do not think buying diamond earrings for a mistress counts as operational expenses. Trent, I pressed the button. The screen on the wall changed. It showed a receipt, a grainy photo of a receipt from a high-end jewelry store in Nashville. Item, diamond stud earrings, 2 carats, date October 15th, price $12,000, payment method S. Tessa gasped. She brought her hand to her throat, touching the empty space where her own jewelry should have been. I do not have diamond earrings, she whispered. Trent, who are those for? Trent turned to her, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. Baby, listen, it is not what it looks like. It was a gift for a client, a bribe, to get us into the deal. I did it for us. For us, I repeated. I stood up and walked over to the window. I looked out at the city, then turned back to face them. You know, Trent, you almost had me fooled. I thought you were just a greedy incompetent. I thought you lost the money because you were stupid. But you are not stupid. You're a thief. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen. Vance, my investigator, gave me this. I said, he recorded it last night, while you were standing on my parents' patio, smoking a cigarette. Thinking everyone was asleep, I hit play. The audio was crystal clear, amplified by the restaurant's sound system. Trent's voice filled the room. Look, as soon as the wire hits, I am out. I transfer my cut to the Cayman account, and I am gone. I am not sticking around for the fallout, Tessa. Please, she is a liability. She can sink with the ship. I just need the bridge loan to clear so I can buy the ticket out. The silence that followed was absolute. Tessa stared at Trent. Her face was not pale. It was gray. She looked like a statue of shock. Sink with the ship, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. You called me a liability. Trent looked at the recording device, then at me, pure hatred burning in his eyes. That is fake, he snarled. It is AI. You fabricated that. I shook my head. Mr. Henderson, I asked. Henderson pulled another sheet of paper from his briefcase. We have the metadata. Mr. Sutherland, it is authentic, but that is not the most interesting thing in my file. Henderson looked at Harold, who was still staring at the spreadsheet as if hoping the numbers would rearrange themselves. Mr. Miller, did you know that your son-in-law is currently a person of interest in a federal investigation in Florida? Harold looked up. Florida Henderson nodded. 3 years ago, a company called Sunshine Capital collapsed in Miami. It was a real estate development fund. It targeted retirees. $5 million vanished. The managing partner was a man named Travis Smith. Henderson paused. Travis Smith disappeared, but his fingerprints matched Trent Sutherland. The room seemed to tilt. Harold stood up, knocking his chair over. "You," Harold stammered, pointing a shaking finger at Trent. "You told me you were an MBA from Wharton. You told me you managed a hedge fund in New York." "I lied." "Harold," Trent spat, dropping the facade entirely. His face twisted into a sneer. "And you were so desperate to believe it. You wanted a rich son-in-law so bad, you did not even check my references. You literally handed me the deed to your house because I complimented your tie. You son of a bitch." Harold lunged across the table. He grabbed Trent's lapels. It was a pathetic, clumsy attack. Trent shoved him back easily. Harold stumbled and fell into his chair, gasping for breath. "Stop it!" Linda screamed. She was sobbing, clutching her napkin. "This cannot be happening. We are a good family." Tessa was still staring at Trent. "You were going to leave me?" she asked, her voice rising to a shriek. "You were going to take the money and leave me with the debt. I stood by you. I lied for you. I posted that video destroying my own sister because you said we needed the money and you were useful," Trent said coldly, straightening his tie. "Until you weren't. You are high maintenance. Tessa, you spend money like it is oxygen. Do you think I wanted to drag that dead weight to the Caymans?" Tessa let out a wail that sounded more animal than human. She grabbed a wine glass and threw it at him. It shattered against the wall, spraying red wine over the pristine wallpaper. "That is enough," I said, my voice cut through the chaos. I looked at the notary, Sarah, who had been sitting quietly in the corner this whole time. "Is the confession ready?" I asked. She nodded, placing the document on the table. Trent laughed, a harsh barking sound. "I am not signing anything," he said, "and I am leaving." He turned toward the door. "I am walking out of here," he announced, "and if anyone tries to stop me, I will sue you for unlawful imprisonment." He took 2 steps. "Officer," I said. The police officer, who had been a silent sentinel by the door, stepped forward. He blocked Trent's path. He was a head taller than Trent and twice as wide. "Mr. Sutherland," the officer said, "I have a warrant for your detainment pending an investigation into wire fraud and identity theft." Trent froze. "You are arresting me." The officer handed him a folded paper. "This is a summons. And I am detaining you as a flight risk, given the recording we just heard regarding your plans to leave the country." Trent looked back at the table. He looked at Harold, slumped and broken. He looked at Tessa, who was weeping into her hands. He looked at Linda, who was staring at the wall in catatonic shock. Then he looked at me. "You planned this," he hissed. "You set us up." I stood up and walked over to him. I was close enough to smell the expensive cologne he used to mask the rot inside. "I did not set you up, Trent," I said. "I just turned on the lights." I turned back to the table. "Mr. Blanton," I said to their lawyer, "I suggest you advise your clients." Blanton looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. He was sweating profusely. "Harold," he stammered. "Linda, given the revelations regarding the mortgage fraud and Mr. Sutherland's legal status if this goes to court, you are looking at significant exposure, conspiracy to commit fraud, accessory after the fact." He looked at the confession document on the table. "If Ms. Miller is offering a way to settle this civilly without pressing criminal charges against you two specifically, you should sign it. Immediately." Harold looked up. He looked old. In the span of an hour, he had aged 10 years. The arrogance was gone. The bluster was gone. All that was left was a frightened old man who had lost his home. "Isla," he whispered, Why did you have to do it like this? You could have just told us." I laughed. It was a bitter, short sound. "Told you I asked? Dad, I stood in your kitchen 3 days ago and told you I worked hard. You laughed at me. I told you I did not want to sign the papers. You threatened to sue me. I told you I was innocent. You let Tessa post a video calling me a thief. I leaned down, placing my hands on the table. You did not want the truth. Dad, you wanted a scapegoat. You wanted me to pay for your mistakes so you could keep pretending you were a king. I pointed at the confession. Sign it. Harold picked up the pen again. His hand was shaking so bad he had to steady it with his other hand. He scribbled his name. Linda signed next, weeping silently, her tears spotting the paper. Tessa signed last. She did not look at the paper. She did not look at anyone. She just signed, her hand limp. Sarah, the notary, stepped forward. She stamped the document. Clunk, clunk. The sound was final. It is done, Sarah said. I picked up the document. I checked the signatures. Perfect, I said. I handed the folder to Thorne. File it, I said. Release the hold on the lottery funds and transfer the title of the house to the Phoenix Trust officially. Thorne nodded. Consider it done. I turned to the officer. You can take Mr. Sutherland now. The officer grabbed Trent's arm. Trent tried to jerk away, but the grip was iron. Don't touch me, Trent shouted as he was dragged toward the door. This is a mistake. I will sue you all. Tessa, call my lawyer. Tessa did not look up. The door closed behind them. The silence returned, heavy and suffocating. My family sat around the table. The remains of the expensive dinner lay uneaten. The wine was spilled. The glass was broken. Linda looked up at me. Her makeup was running down her face. Are you happy? She asked, her voice trembling with venom. You destroyed us. You destroyed your sister's marriage. You took our home. Are you happy? Isla. I looked at her. I did not take your home. Mom, I said, you gave it away. You gave it to a con artist because you were too proud to live within your means. I just bought the wreckage. I picked up my purse. And as for destroying you, I pulled out my phone. I opened the browser. I showed them the live feed of Tessa's TikTok account. The comments on her video were changing. People were starting to ask questions. Wait, someone just posted proof that the husband is a scammer. Is the sister actually the victim? You dragged the internet into my life, I said. You wanted an audience. I turned off the screen. Now you have one. I signaled to the waiter. Check, please. I said. The waiter brought the leather folder. I pulled out my own debit card, the one connected to the new account with the litigation funding. I paid the bill, $500 for a dinner nobody ate. I stood up. I am leaving now. I said, Thorne will be in touch regarding the eviction timeline. Eviction, Harold gasped. You are kicking us out. I looked at him. I own the house. Dad, I said, and unlike you, I am a responsible project manager. I do not let failing structures stand without inspection. I walked to the door. Where will we go? Tessa whispered. I stopped. I did not turn around. I hear there are some affordable motels on the highway. I said, Room 112 is available. I walked out of the private dining room, leaving them sitting in the ruins of their own making. The door clicked shut behind me. I walked down the hallway to the elevator. I felt light, weightless. I had walked in there with a $2 ticket and a lawsuit hanging over my head. I was walking out with $150 million, the deed to my childhood home, and my freedom. Mr. Henderson and the officer were waiting by the elevator with Trent, who was now in handcuffs. Ms. Miller, Henderson said, a productive evening, very, I said. I looked at Trent. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the floor. Defeated. I pressed the down button. Going down the elevator, voice chirped. No. I thought, I am just getting started. The door to the private dining room clicked shut, sealing the rest of us inside. The heavy oak panels muffled the sounds of Trent shouting in the hallway, his threats of lawsuits fading into the hum of the restaurant ventilation. I stood at the head of the table. The silence in the room was heavy, thick with the smell of expensive seafood that had gone cold and the metallic tang of fear. My mother, Linda, was staring at the space where Trent had been standing, her mouth slightly open, her mascara leaving dark trails down her powdered cheeks. My father, Harold, looked shrunken. as if his suit was suddenly 3 sizes too big for him. Tessa was shivering, hugging herself, her eyes wide and unblinking. They were waiting for the credits to roll. They thought the show was over because the villain had been dragged away. But the show was not over. We were just moving to the sentencing phase. I sat back down. I took a sip of water. The ice clinked against the glass, a sharp sound that made Tessa jump. "Mr. Henderson," I said, keeping my voice level, "can you please clarify the current status of the asset for my family?" Henderson stepped forward. He did not sit. He opened the file he had placed on the table earlier. "Certainly. Ms. Miller." He turned to my father. "Mr. Miller, as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, the deed to your home at 42 Oakwood Drive has been transferred to the Phoenix Trust. Because the mortgage was in default and the bank exercised its right to sell the non-performing note, the foreclosure auction scheduled for November 30th is canceled." Harold let out a breath, a ragged sound of relief. "Oh, thank God," he whispered. "Thank God. Isla, you saved the house. I knew you would not let us lose it. We can work this out. We can pay you back over time." Henderson held up a hand. "I am afraid you misunderstand. Mr. Miller, the foreclosure is canceled because the bank no longer owns the debt. The Phoenix Trust owns the debt. And under the terms of the acceleration clause you triggered by committing fraud on the application, the full amount is due immediately." Harold froze. What he asked? "It means," I said, leaning forward, "that you are not the owner of that house anymore. Dad, you are a squatter, and I am the landlord, and I have the legal right to change the locks tonight if I want to. But you are my daughter," Linda stammered. "You would not put your parents on the street." I looked at her. "You put me on the street on Thanksgiving. Mom, you told me to leave because I ruined the mood. You let me sleep in a motel while you planned to sue me." I picked up the document that Thorne had placed on the table, the confession, the one they had hesitated to sign before Trent was arrested. "Here is how this is going to work," I said. I slid the paper toward the center of the table. "This is the final offer. It is not a negotiation. It is an ultimatum." I pointed to the first paragraph. "Number 1. You withdraw the lawsuit immediately. Your lawyer, Mr. Blanton, will file the motion to dismiss with prejudice right now, electronically. That lifts the freeze on my lottery winnings." I pointed to the second paragraph. "Number 2. You, Tessa, will record a new video. Right here, right now. You will apologize. You will state clearly that the previous video was a lie, that I bought the ticket, and that the family is happy for me. You will explain that the dispute was a misunderstanding caused by Trent. You will clean my name." Tessa shook her head. "I cannot. The comments, they will eat me alive." I shrugged. "That is the price of admission." "Tessa, you wanted to be an influencer. Now you can influence the truth." I pointed to the third paragraph. "Number 3. You sign this document acknowledging that the lottery ticket is my sole property and that you have no claim to it, now or in the future." And in exchange, Harold asked, his voice was weak, defeated. "In exchange," I said, "I will not pursue criminal charges against you, Dad, for the bank fraud, and I will not press charges against you, Mom and Tessa, for the identity theft and credit card fraud." I looked at Henderson. "Mr. Henderson has agreed to hold the bank's investigation in abeyance, provided the debt is serviced, which I will do, because I own it. And the house," Linda asked. "Do we get to keep the house?" "No," I said. The word hung in the air. "You cannot afford that house," I said. "You never could. That is why you are in this mess. You are living a lifestyle that is a lie. I am selling the house," I continued. "I will pay off the debts you racked up. I will clear the wreckage." "Then where do we live?" Harold asked, panic rising in his voice again. "I have arranged for a rental property," I said. "It is a 3-bedroom townhouse in West Knoxville. It is clean. It is safe. It is modest." I pulled out a set of keys from my purse and placed them on the table. "I will pay the rent on that townhouse for 1 year. I will pay the utilities. I will pay for a moving truck to get your essential furniture there." 1 year, Linda gasped. A townhouse. But our friends, the country club. You do not have a country club membership anymore. Mom, I said, you are broke. I looked at them hard. After 1 year, you are on your own. You need to find jobs. You need to learn how to budget. If you need money for food, I will set up a grocery delivery account. I will not give you cash, not a single penny, because I know if I give you cash, you will spend it on appearances. This is humiliating, Harold said, staring at the keys. Yes, I said, it is, but it is better than prison, and it is better than the homeless shelter. I tapped the paper. Those are the terms. Sign it, and you have a roof over your head and a clean slate. Refuse, and Mr. Henderson calls Officer Reynolds back into the room. I looked at my watch. You have 2 minutes. The silence returned. It was broken only by the sound of Tessa sobbing softly. Harold looked at Blanton. Is she serious? Harold asked. Can she do this? Blanton wiped his face with his handkerchief. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man who realized he had backed the wrong horse and was now just trying to avoid being trampled. Mr. Miller, Blanton said quietly, she holds the mortgage. She holds the evidence of fraud. She holds the winning ticket. She holds all the cards. If you go to court, you will lose, and you will likely go to jail. Harold closed his eyes. He let out a long, shuddering sigh. He reached out and took the pen. He did not look at me. He signed his name on the line. The stroke was shaky, weak. It was the signature of a man who had finally surrendered. He pushed the paper to Linda. She stared at it. She looked at me with eyes full of hatred. I will never forgive you for this, she whispered. I know. I said, I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for a signature. She signed. Then she pushed it to Tessa. Tessa picked up the pen. She looked at her phone, at the black screen. She knew her digital life was over. She signed. I turned to the notary. Seal it, I said. Sarah stepped forward. She stamped the document 3 times. Clunk, clunk, clunk. It sounded like the closing of a cell door. I turned to Blanton. File the dismissal. I said. He opened his laptop. He typed for a few moments. He hit enter. It is filed, he said. The court system has received the withdrawal of the suit. The restraining order is lifted effective immediately. I turned to Thorne. Verify it. Thorne checked his tablet. It is clear. Isla, the funds are unfrozen. You have full access. I nodded. I stood up. Tessa. I said, the video. Now. Tessa wiped her eyes. She held up her phone. She opened TikTok. She pressed record. Her voice shook. But she said the words. She said she was wrong. She said Trent had manipulated them. She said the ticket was mine. She said I was a good sister. Post it. I said, she posted it. I watched on my own phone as the notification popped up. I watched the first few comments roll in. The tide was turning. The internet mob was confused, then angry at her, then apologetic to me. I put my phone away. I looked at my family one last time. They were sitting in the wreckage of their pride. They had their freedom, but they had lost their power, and that was a fate worse than death for people like them. I picked up the keys to the townhouse. I tossed them to my father. He caught them. The movers will be at the house on Monday at 8 in the morning. I said, be ready. I turned to the door. Isla. My mother called out. I stopped. Will we see you? She asked. On Christmas, I looked back at them. The private dining room felt small now. I do not think so. Mom, I said, I have a lot of work to do. I walked out. I walked past Henderson. I walked past the nervous waiters. I walked past the maitre d'. I stepped into the elevator. The doors closed, shutting out the gold room, shutting out the drama, shutting out the toxicity that had defined the first 35 years of my life. I rode the elevator down to the lobby. I walked out the front doors of the Sunsphere Tower. The night air was cold and clean. The rain had cleared, and the stars were visible above the city lights. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. Deposit received Tennessee State Lottery Commission. Amount $112 million. $400,000. It was the lump sum. After taxes. I stared at the number. It was just digits on a screen. I walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I opened my banking app. I made the first transfer, $250,000 to Bridgepoint Capital to pay off the litigation loan with interest. Done. I made the second transfer, $50,000 to Elias Thorne for his retainer and bonus. Done. I made the third transfer, $20,000 to Vance, a tip for a job well done. Then I opened a new browser tab. I went to the website for the Knoxville City Parks Department. I found the donation page for the Riverfront Revitalization Project, the one I had managed, the one I had been fired from. I typed in a number, $5 million. Donor name, the Miller Foundation. Note for the construction of accessible playgrounds and public gardens, to build something that lasts. I hit submit. I sat there for a moment, watching the confirmation screen. I was not going to buy a yacht. I was not going to buy a mansion. I was going to open my own firm. I was going to build parks. I was going to fix sidewalks. I was going to do exactly what I loved. But this time, nobody could fire me, and nobody could tell me I was not worth it. I started the engine of my beat-up sedan. It rattled, just like always. I patted the dashboard. "We need a new car," I whispered. I pulled out of the parking lot. I drove onto the highway, merging into the traffic. I was just one set of headlights in a stream of thousands. My family was back there, in the tower. Trapped in their smallness, I was down here, on the road, moving forward. They had tried to make me pay for a cruise I did not take. Instead, they handed me the keys to the world. I rolled down the window. The wind rushed in, cold and biting and alive. The $2 ticket did not buy me money. It bought me freedom. Thank you so much for listening to this story until the very end. If you enjoyed Isla's journey from being the underdog to owning the whole game, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to know where you are tuning in from and what you would have done if you were in Isla's shoes. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel. Like this video and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people. See you in the next one.